Welcome back from the ad break, and let's continue with our lesson. So we are now going to be going into the first focus of our lesson, which is equivalent fractions and forms. So we are going to start by simplifying proper fractions. And an example of a proper fraction is 4/10 or 4 divided by 10. So for us to simplify this fraction, we need to find the highest common factor. Do you remember the highest common factor between 4 and 10? If you are thinking of 2, then you are absolutely correct. So what is going to happen here is that we are going to divide the numerator by 2 and we are going to divide the denominator by 2. Why are we dividing? Because we are simplifying this fraction. The answer then becomes there 2/5 or 2 divided by 5. So remember, we use the highest common factor of 4 and 10 to simplify the fraction. And as we've seen there, that highest common factor is 2. Next, we are going to try and simplify 16 and 40. So remember, how do we simplify? Find the HCF of those two numbers. So we need to find the highest common factor between 16 and 40. Do you know what that highest common factor is? If you were thinking of 8, then you are correct. Because now what we're going to do with that highest common factor is that we are going to divide the numerator by 8 and we're going to divide the denominator by 8. And what answer do we get if we divide both the numerator and the denominator by the highest common factor? Again, we have 2/5. What does this mean? Because initially we had 4/10 and now we have 16/40. So what does it mean? Because after we've simplified both of them, they are giving us the same answer. This is what we call equivalent fractions. This means that 4 divided by 10 is equal to 16 divided by 40. Why are they equal? Because when we simplify them to its simplest form, both of them are equal to 2/5. So when we are looking at equivalent fractions, remember we have the 4 divided by 10, which is equals to 16 divided by 40, which is also equals to 2 divided by 5. As you can see them there, they look different, they have different numerators and different denominators, but all of them are equal to the same thing. The common fractions above all have the same value. Let's look at how. This is, when we look at the first one there, this is 16 pieces out of a total of 40 pieces. That's what when we are looking. Remember what a fraction is. It is part of a whole. So that means we have 16 pieces out of a total of 40 pieces. What does it mean for the next one? 4/10. Again, it means the same thing. We have 4 pieces out of a total of 10 pieces. And then, since they are all equal 2/5, this also means that we have just 2 pieces out of a total of 5 pieces, right? So all of them are equal. They all mean the same thing. It is part of the whole. And an example there, if we show it now in a picture form, we have one whole. So this whole part is one whole. But if we are going to take part of that whole, how much are we really taking? So as we can see there from that one that I've highlighted there, we cannot really see how much we are taking from that whole. But once I now split that whole into, for example, 40 pieces, and I just take 16 of those 40 pieces, then I can see how much of that whole I have taken. But again, 40 pieces is a lot of pieces. So what do? We simplify. And when I simplify, I can now take that whole and cut it into 10 pieces. And when I cut it into 10 pieces, I'm no longer taking 16, I'm just taking 4. So I'm just taking 4 pieces out of a total of 10 pieces. But again, that is still not its simplest form. We can go further and take that one whole and split it into 5 pieces. And when I split it into 5 pieces, I am only going to take the 1 and the 2. So just 2 pieces out of that one whole. But all of these, as you can see, represent exactly the same amount of that whole. Let's look at simplifying improper fractions. So, first of all, what is an improper fraction? Improper fractions are common fractions where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So the numerator is bigger than the denominator. And if that's the case, then we would need to simplify that improper fraction. So, example is 15 halves. So that is 15 divided by 2. How can I now split this 15 so that it is no longer an improper fraction? So when I think of 15 halves, I can also think of 14 halves plus 1 half. Because if I have 15 halves, I can just split it into 14 and 1. Why am I doing that? Because when I look here at 14 halves, we know that 14 halves is the same as 14 divided by 2. And 14 divided by 2 is 7. And when I add that to 1 half, now we no longer have 15 halves, we have 7 wholes and 1 half. And we can see that they are all equal. So 15 halves is equal to 7 wholes and 1 half. And that's how we have simplified that improper fraction. So the number of groups of 2 that make up 15 are 7 groups. That is 2 multiplied by 7, which is equals to 14. This leaves a remainder of 1 to get to 15. So 7 wholes and the remainder of 1 out of 2, which is 1 halves, that gives us 7 wholes and 1 half. And we call this a mixed fraction. Why do we call it a mixed fraction? That is because it consists of a whole number and a fraction. So, if we have the mixed fraction, how do we move from the mixed fraction back to the improper fraction? Again, let's repeat, the mixed fractions are common fractions that consist of a whole number and a common fraction. And this is how now we would take that 7 wholes with that 1 half, and we would now change it back to that improper fraction. Step 1, we write the whole number and the common fraction separately. So that would be us now saying that is 7 plus 1 half. So it's still 7 wholes and 1 half. And then what do we do next? We convert the whole number into an improper fraction so that the denominators are the same. So we need to get this 7 to have the same denominator as the common fraction without changing the value. And how are we going to do that? As we've seen that 7 can be written as 14 halves, because 14 divided by 2 is still 7. So that means that that 7 has now become 14 divided by 2, which is exactly the same value. When we add it to that half, now we have 14 halves plus 1 half. That gives us 15 halves. And that now becomes an improper fraction. I hope you've seen how we change and switch between the improper fraction and the mixed fraction, which is going to make our calculations easier. Let's quickly go to an ad break and then we'll see you just now.